What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the Hard Doc Life Vodcast. It's your host, Savon Foster, coming live from College Station, Texas. Tonight is a very special NBA-themed episode where I'm going to talk about my mid-season reports on who I plan on giving the season awards to, who I think is the most deserving. We'll look at a playoff projection. I'll give my thoughts on who I think will finish out if the playoffs started today. And I'll even put together a possible 16 seed NBA playoff setup, very similar to what the March Madness playoff is typically set up to be like. A lot of people have been talking about it. I think the NBA should do it, but we'll get into that. Again, thanks for tuning to the Hard Doc Live Podcast. Like, share, subscribe. It's going to be a good one, y'all. To be honest with you, this is like maybe the third time I've recorded this. My first one was about an hour long. I don't want it to be that long. Excuse me, I don't want to hold you all up. I want to be able to get in, make my arguments, and get out. Hopefully you all enjoy this. Like I said, like, share, subscribe. Comment if you think I said something you don't agree with, or you think my numbers are off, or you just want to have a friendly debate regarding these season awards, playoff playoff projection, and the possibility of a 16 seed. I welcome all of it. Just know I study. I went to the School of Hard Knocks, taught by Nick Wright. He's hands down my favorite sports analyst. I listen to him every day. My man's, he knows what he's talking about. That's who I aim to be like when it comes to talking sports, specifically the NBA. Without further ado, let's get into these season award projections. So based off of the performance so far this NBA season, my top three for the MVP race comes down to James Harden, who's averaging 35, 6, and 8.5. My numbers are a little bit off. I looked up all of these stats last week. I didn't have enough time to polish them up before I started recording. So James Harden, 35, 6, and 8.5. We all know about his miraculous, this marvelous, this untouchable streak that he's on. This is something that we haven't seen in the modern NBA, and I think we all need to take time to appreciate this because the closest thing he's coming to is Kobe, and then before Kobe, Wilt. So we need to appreciate this while we got it because this is amazing. And then Kawhi Leonard, who's averaging 27, 8, and 3. And then finally, Giannis, he's averaging 26, 12, and 6. Out of those three, I have my number one pick for MVP to be Kawhi Leonard. Although he's been sitting out some games, the Raptors, they've kind of been fluctuating without him. So that's the number one reason why I'm picking him. But if I'm being honest, I know that the votes are going to go to Giannis. His performance has been insane. While Harden has been putting up extraordinary numbers, it's looking more so as his team can't step up to the plate as opposed to Giannis's team, who's still a very solid team, and Giannis takes them to another level. I think that's what a real MVP is that you take your team to another level. And as of right now, the Rockets are sitting at the 5 seed in the West. The Bucks are the number 1 seed in the East. Raptors are number 2. That's why I'm leaning towards the Raptors. I feel like Kawhi really stepped up and showed that he's more than just a system player. He actually goes in and he contributes to the team. And with the Raptors fluctuating so far, that's why I'm putting my vote on Kawhi. And plus, he's the best two-way player in the league, both ends of the court. He's a leader. You got to sit here and you got to give him his kudos for that. My honorable mentions go to PG. Number 1, Paul George, PG 13. He's been throwing up some rated R shots. Like, I'll be honest, my man is nasty. He's a scary dude right now, and I just hope that he carries that into the playoffs, because if he does, it's a wrap. Honestly, I can see Paul George taking the Thunder to the Western Conference Finals, potentially the NBA Finals. And then Anthony Davis, obviously, he's in such a small market, he'll never get the MVP contention that he deserves. I feel like he's been putting up some solid numbers for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and he definitely deserves it. That's why he gets my honorable mention. For Rookie of the Year, this doesn't need any explanation. I'm going with Luka. Unpopular opinion, I think DeAndre Ayton, he deserves it the most. But for me personally, I'm not a fan of players winning Rookie of the Year on non-playoff teams because that's an unfair advantage. If your team is a poor performing team, you already have a higher probability of getting more playing time, which in turn results in, higher stats. I think if you place these players on a regular regular playoff contention team, you might see how they're able to perform with limited minutes, and then you can base them off of that. Again, this is a huge statistics number, which is very similar to the MVP race. Who's ever putting up the best numbers is who typically gets the MVP, not so much as who holds the greatest role and is the X factor for their team. Defensive player of the year, like I said before, Paul George is probably one of the top two-way players, while Kawhi is my pick for the MVP. I don't see him winning Defensive Player of the Year, which is what most people would put him in that conversation. I would personally put Paul George. His defensive win shares is .176, and his defensive rating is 101.4. Both of those are, I think he's one of the few players to be in the top 5 for both ratings. So you got to give him his credit. The other players, their minutes just don't compare to Paul George. So Paul George, he has these numbers with increased minutes, so that just kind of speaks to his role and how he's able to sustain that within the game. And then for Sixth Man of the Year, as long as Lou Will's playing, Lou will always be in consideration for the Sixth Man of the Year. But I personally have D Rose coming in at number 1. The performance he's been having for the Bucks coming off the bench, definitely been stepping up, especially when Karl Anthony Towns has been wavering, Andrew Wiggins has been wavering in their performance. D Rose has definitely been stepping up and doing what he needs to do, and you got to give him his credit for it. And also have Montrezl Harrell. While he didn't get the nod for me, he's definitely been playing a really big role. His intensity is amazing, and he's actually drawn some comparisons to the one and only Dennis Rodman in regards to his intensity, rebounding, smart decision making in regards to his passes, easy bunny buckets. So I got to give him his credit. I don't see him transitioning into that yet, but for Sixth Man of the Year, I can project him getting it within the next year or so as he gets an increase in minutes, as his IQ of the game of basketball, as well as his IQ of the league and other players and their tendencies. I can definitely see him manipulating and taking advantage of the game, which is going to bode well for him. And then another interesting thing about these three, they're ranked in the top 5 of 3 of the 5 major statistical categories. So out of points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals, for all bench players, they have the top 5 in at least 3 of those statistical categories each. So obviously that just shows the contributions that they make to their team coming off the bench, and you got to give them credit for that. If you're a real basketball fan, if you're worth your salt as a basketball fan or aficionado, you know the game, you understand the game, and you got to give credit when it's due. And then for most improved player, it comes down to Pascal Siakam and De'Aaron Fox. I give my nod to Pascal. He's increased his numbers from 7.3 points per game to 15 points per game, 4.5 rebounds to 7 rebounds, and then 2 assists to 3 assists. That's not a major jump, but what he's been doing with his minutes, stepping up when Kawhi is off the court, and their current playoff record, and their current playoff contention and record overall as a team, you gotta give him the credit. And the biggest thing between him and De'Aaron Fox, outside of record and playoff contention, is their plus minus. Pascal Siakam at the time of these numbers, which was about Wednesday last week, he was at a 6.3, while De'Aaron Fox is at a 1.2. So he's doing pretty well. He's actually his plus minus is 5 times higher than De'Aaron Fox's. And then Coach of the Year, I give it to Nick Nurse. He's a first-year coach. He took over a team that was put together by Dwayne Casey, and he's taking his team to another level. Personally, I see the Raptors having a higher level of intensity, a better system, better level of accountability. My next 2 will be Budenholzer with the Bucks, and then Mike Malone for the Nuggets. Mike Malone, he's doing a great job, but with this team having little to no playoff experience, I can't sit here and give him Coach of the Year, because it's not so much as just regular season. It's how have you primed your team for playoff performance. And I just can't give it to him. Budenholzer, he's done a great job. I think the only reason I put Nurse over him is that Budenholzer, he's been able to work and put this team together and really build and develop these guys, whereas Nurse had to sit here and pretty much earn his respect. He had to pretty much earn his name with this squad, and he's been able to do so, especially with all the negative attention around Kawhi Leonard. So that's pretty much the wrap up of my of my NBA awards projections. So, like I said, I have Kawhi getting MVP. Rookie of the Year goes to Luka. Defensive Player of the Year goes to Paul George. Sixth Man of the Year, Derrick Rose. And Most Improved Player, Pascal Siakam. Coach of the Year, Nick Nurse. If you got anything you want to debate, please reach out to me. I'm all for it. If you think I'm saying some blasphemous malarkey, hey, let me know. I'll be more than glad to go back and forth. This is all friendly banter. This is all conversation between two people who love the game. So I encourage all of it. I look forward to see what you have to say. All right, so looking at the playoffs, as you see, I have the teams up here. We have the Bucks, the Raptors, the Pacers, the 76ers, Celtics, Nets, Heat, and Hornets. For the East, that's a 12-game differential. And then for the West, we have the Warriors, Nuggets, Thunder, Blazers, Rockets, Spurs, Jazz, and Clippers. So looking at this playoff setup, following a typical bracket, you have the Bucks and the Hornets. Have the Bucks winning that series. You have the 76ers and the Celtics. I have the Celtics winning that series. And then between the Bucks and the Celtics, I have the Celtics going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then for the second half of the East bracket, I have the Pacers and the Nets. I would be going towards the Pacers, but without Victor Oladipo, I actually have the Nets winning this series. And then from the Raptors and the Heat, I obviously have the Raptors winning this series. And then between the Raptors and the Nets, I have the Raptors going to the Eastern Conference Finals. For the West, I have the Warriors and the Clippers, the Blazers and the Rockets. From the Warriors and the Clippers, obviously I have the Warriors going. I will say that I think this may be a it may be a 4-game series, but I'm leaning more towards a 5-game series. The Warriors will go up 2, lose 1 to the Clippers at home. Well, at the Clippers home in LA, and then they'll win the last 2. Then I have the Blazers and the Rockets. The Blazers, they continue to underperform in the playoffs like they always do. Wouldn't be surprised if the Rockets get this out in 5 games. It'll probably be 3 games, lose 1, and then knock out that last game. So that's how I'm projecting the Rockets to get that W. And then for the second half, I have the Thunder and the Spurs. Thunder, obviously, they're going to get this one. The most important matchup is going to be DeMar DeRozan and Paul George. But I feel like the X Factor matchup is actually going to be Steven Adams and LaMarcus Aldridge. More so, Steven Adams rebounding and defense, LaMarcus Aldridge being able to survive through that. And finally, the Nuggets and the Jazz. Have the Nuggets winning 6 games. It's only going 6 games, not because the Jazz are a competitive team, but more so because the Nuggets have no playoff experience, limited playoff experience. So these players, they're going to have to, go through some growing pains in the moment. They're going to have to learn to rise to the occasion, pretty much trial by fire. And between the Warriors and Rockets, I have the Warriors coming out on top of the Rockets. The only way that this would work in the Rockets' favor is if Boogie gets into foul trouble. I've been saying for a while that Boogie's going to be the X factor in the playoffs because there isn't really an answer for him from any of the playoff contending teams. These teams don't have a true big man presence. They don't have someone who can match up well with Boogie. If they do have a solid big man, he's a traditional back to the basket, may have some extra skills, passing skills. That's why you see these big men like Nurkic and Jokic having triple doubles. But for the most part, I really wouldn't say that they can truly match up well with Boogie, especially when he's out, in that above the elbow 3-point range. He can put a quick 2 dribbles between the legs, and then before you know it, he's at the cup. And he's definitely going to keep getting into more shape, develop, and having more mobility. So I have him getting out. The only way that wouldn't work is if he gets in a foul trouble, and Kenneth Faried and P.J. Tucker can definitely take advantage of that. Both high intensity, high energy guys, high defensive IQ, so I can definitely see that happening. And then for the Thunder and the Nuggets, I have the Thunder coming out on top for the same reason why I had the Nuggets going to a potential 6-game series with the Jazz, and that's because of their limited playoff experience. While Paul George hasn't stepped up, Russell Westbrook has experienced tremendous playoff experience and success, as well as Steven Adams. So in the way Paul George has been playing, I can just see him consistently step up, and I don't have too much to worry about with this playoff series. So it's coming down to the Warriors and the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. Going back to the Eastern Conference Finals, it's the Celtics and the Raptors. I say the biggest thing that this is going to come down to is the power of the bench. And the Celtics bench hasn't been playing well at all this season. But if the playoffs have shown me anything from last season and from the season before, these guys know how to step up. Brad Stevens knows how to coach in the playoffs, and that's what I'm not worried about. So I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup. It is going to go 7 games. Kawhi Leonard is going to match up with he's going to match up with Jason Tatum for most possessions. He may have some Terry Rozier experience, but when it comes down to the stretch, wouldn't be surprised that if in the fourth quarter, if the game is within 5 points, that he's solely on Kyrie Irving. That's going to mean Pascal Siakam needs to step up, and then also Serge Ibaka and Valanciunas, they're both going to have to step up in the block, make sure that they can hold the paint. Because as we know, if Kyrie gets to shaking and baking, everyone knows to hit those back cuts or to go for the alley-oop. And the way how Al Horford plays, he's consistent, he's smart, strong basketball IQ. He can definitely take advantage of that. And another thing I've noticed about the Celtics, they know how to get the foul. At the end of the day, they can't make the basket. They know how to throw the body in and get that foul. So looking at these teams, I'll be honest, as much of a Celtics fan as I am, their inconsistency so far this season have the Raptors going to the NBA Finals against the Warriors. And for the Warriors-Thunder matchup, it's just going to come down to Boogie Cousins. At the end of the day, Boogie Cousins is Boogie. Like, we know Steph is going to be Steph, Clay is going to be Clay, KD is going to be KD. It's going to come down to Boogie Cousins and a role that he plays in the paint. And I think the Warriors have the better off-the-bench, low-block game. They have Looney coming off, who's amazing, great spark, and then you have solid guys coming off the bench like Sean Livingston and Iggy, who can get you quick buckets, easy buckets, get that game back and stretch it. I've seen the Warriors go from 3 down to being up 12, like within a matter of 4 minutes. So you got to give credit to that. I think the Thunder, they don't have the experience yet for that. But I would also say a notable matchup would be Dennis Schroeder and Steph Curry. I could see Dennis challenging Steph throughout, and this might not be Steph's best series. So if you do see Steph struggling, most of it is coming from Dennis Schroeder. And but I still have the Warriors coming out on top. Again, I'm a fan of the big man. I'm a fan of a paint player, so I'm always going to say that that is the paint that wins games. So I have Boogie Cousins being an X factor, essentially carrying the Warriors to the NBA Finals. It's going to come down to the Warriors and the Raptors. I think it's time for the East to win. I do have the Raptors taking over, getting a W. I think the biggest thing for the Raptors is the role that Kawhi Leonard plays, his utility, being able to guard 1 through 4. I think he's going to be able to switch. Kyle Lowry and Steph Curry, they're going to have a solid matchup. Kyle Lowry, in my opinion, is more of a true point guard, while Steph is a scoring point guard. Steph can pass the ball. He can read the court, and, he can definitely spark plays. But I think, his natural inclination when it comes to the playoffs is to get the easy bucket. So he's gonna shoot those threes as long as Kyle Lowry stays at his hip and he's driving and dishing. He can definitely get those easy fouls on Steph. If he can get 3 easy fouls on Steph within the first half, Steph is going to step off a little bit. Kyle Lowry can hit his jumper. He can definitely feed and dish it to other individuals. Serge Ibaka is going to play a huge role when it comes to drawing Boogie Cousins out, or even putting him into the paint and getting some of those easy fouls on him. Again, foul trouble is going to be Boogie's Achilles heel, no pun intended. He's definitely going to have to do his best to stay out of foul trouble. Same thing with Draymond Green, Serge Ibaka, and Nicholas Valanciunas. Both of them are extremely smart players, extremely well-versed in regards to their paint game, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to take advantage of the paint game a little bit, get these guys into trouble, kind of slow down the game a little bit. That's the biggest thing with the Warriors. If you can slow them down and kill their half-court game, you're good. But that also means that the Raptors need to play a very strong, very solid game, smart shots, smart possessions, rebound, and as we know, that's just a challenge in the NBA. A lot of teams just don't make the best decisions anymore, and rebounding has lost its intensity. You can count on one hand how many players are actual notable rebounders. So while that is a challenge with the league, I can see, that kind of not being so present within the NBA Finals, especially in the Raptors squad. I think the way Nick Nurse coaches, he has a bit of an old school style, definitely slows the pace, but he knows how to speed it up when he has to break or when he's realizing that defense is very easy to collapse. So I'm looking forward to that. And finally, I'm on to my 16 seed NBA playoff projection. So personally, I believe in odds versus evens. Take all the odd teams, reseed them 1 through 8. Take all the even teams, reseed them 1 through 8. Have two separate brackets going into each other. But that's a lot of math. That's a lot of going back and forth. And that's something that I'll present later on. That's how I would do the 16 seed. But looking at the traditional 16 seed style system that you see in most tournaments, we'll just go off with that one. And I'm actually going to address some of the common myths that are associated with NBA, with the NBA transitioning to a 16 seed. So looking at the teams 1 through 16, they go in this order: Bucks, Warriors, Raptors, Nuggets, Pacers, 76ers, Thunder, Celtics, Blazers, Rockets, Spurs, Jazz, Clippers, Nets, Lakers, Kings. So the interesting thing about this is that when you do a 1 through 16 seed, the Lakers and the Kings replace the Heat and the Hornets. So that switches the East to West balance to be 10 for the West, 6 for the East. Now, I want to address this common misconception. Folks say that the West extremely overpowers the East. I don't know what they mean by overpower. A two-team differential isn't that bad to me, in my opinion. If it was more, 12-4, 11-5, I say that's you can definitely see a bigger difference. But I mean, if it's 10-6, I think that's a little more understandable. You can definitely fluctuate a little bit. And then the disbursement of the teams. Two of the top three teams are in the East. From 4 to 8, 3 of them are in the East. And from 9 to 16, that's where you see the biggest difference. That's where only one of those teams are in the East. So there are some challenges. That's probably the biggest conflict so far, is people say that, it challenges parity. Personally, I think that having these teams match up with other teams, obviously the West has a specific play and identity, and compare that is the complete opposite of the East. So I think having this type of setup is actually pretty dope. So without further ado, I'll go into the breakdown. 1 and 16 are the Bucks and the Kings. 8 and 9 are the Celtics and the Blazers. This is the first set of 4 teams. I have the Bucks making it out, obviously, against the Kings. No playoff experience, extremely young team versus a mature Bucks team who's actually pretty solid. And then 8 and 9 for the Celtics and Blazers. Again, the Blazers constantly melt down in the playoffs. That's always been their biggest challenge, and that's why I can't say that they'll make it out the first round with any confidence. So I have the Celtics making it out of this round. The next bracket is 4 and 13, Nuggets and Clippers, and then 5 and 12, Pacers and Jazz. For the Nuggets and the Clippers, I have the Nuggets making it out. Again, they're just a more solid team, more put together, and that Clippers curse is real. I don't know what it is. While this will be a better matchup and I can project a 7-game series solely off of talent and lineup, I still have the Nuggets making it out. And for the Pacers and Jazz, even without Victor Oladipo, I would say that the Pacers have a better chance of beating the Jazz because they have that consistency across their roster, as opposed to the Jazz, where it's very top heavy, and that if one player has a bad game, it's very hard for the others to step up. Also, Rudy Gobert, he doesn't really have an offensive presence outside of the fast break and a collapse in the defense. With Domantas Sabonis on the squad, I don't see too many defensive collapses. So, that's going to be a pretty big challenge for him to get incorporated into the offense, even if it is to just get a touch, collapse the defense, and then kick it out. Next set of teams are the Warriors and Lakers. That's 2 and 15 respectively, and the Thunder and Rockets 7 and 10. Obviously, I have the Warriors making it out. Unless the Lakers make a crazy trade by the deadline next week, I am not projecting anything special. So I have the Warriors making it out. LeBron's going to LeBron, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was a 5 or 6 game series, as well as if Kyle Kuzma, Rondo, both stay healthy. Lonzo plays intense. Like the Lakers team is a big if team. All they gotta do is if they play good, if they play how we know that they can play and play that consistently, they could upset the Warriors. I don't think I would be surprised. I think it would be one of those things where later in the playoffs, I would realize the Lakers really beat the Warriors. And now the Warriors dynasty, that squad is going to go up into question. And then for the Thunder and Rockets, I have the Thunder beating the Rockets. The biggest thing for the Rockets is James Harden. The way he's been playing lately, he's carrying the team. If he has an off, like even if he doesn't have an off night, he can still drop 55 and the team can still lose just because it's hard for the rest of the team to get incorporated into the game. It's harder for the rest of the team to get their touches to really contribute to the offense. That puts a higher defensive liability on them because every shot that James Harden doesn't make and they get a second possession, it's up to them to either capitalize on it or hope that James Harden can, make use of that second possession. So that's why I have the Thunder. They have a more balanced team. Everyone knows their role. Paul George has been stepping up tremendously, and as you know, Russell Westbrook, when he gets into that playoff intense mode, he can definitely contribute. His biggest issue is having a cold streak with his shot. But the way Steven Adams rebounds, the way that Diallo and some of the other players can rebound and kick the ball back out, and the rest of the movement within the team, I wouldn't be surprised if Paul George ended up being the savior of this squad during the playoffs. And then finally, the last bracket is the Raptors and Nets 4-13, and the 76ers and Spurs seeded 6-11. Have the Raptors beating out the Nets. I'm projecting the 5-game series. Most likely it'll be Raptors, Nets, Raptors. And then that last game that the Raptors are going to win is most likely going to be a blowout. And for the 76ers and the Spurs, I have the 76ers winning that series. The Spurs, they're just not the team that they were before. Joel Embiid is going to really take LaMarcus Aldridge out of his game. He's going to make LaMarcus work for everything. That's pretty much one of the challenges. LaMarcus doesn't have too many big men that he has to go up against every single night who really poses themselves as a challenge. Now, to address one of the challenges or myths, Adam Silver over the summer stated that travel and paying for travel would be one of the biggest challenges for the playoff series. So I took the liberty of looking at the conference matchups within the first round. So there are 4 East versus West. So I will say that is a pretty high number. Half the matchups within the first round are East versus West. And 3 are West versus West, and 1 is East versus East. So that is a little bit of a challenge. The East versus West are the Bucks and the Kings, Celtics and the Blazers, Pacers and the Jazz, 76ers and the Spurs. The West versus West matchups are the Nuggets and the Clips, Warriors and the Lakers, Thunder and the Rockets. And then finally, the East versus East matchup, the only one it is the Raptors and the Nets. So, it's half and half the amount of money. It is funny how these teams are in clear opposite ends of the country, but part of that is also just how the teams fell within the seeds. That may change. It may not be that much of an issue in regards to distance. Depends on who's in and who's out. But looking at the second round, it goes down to Bucks and Celtics, Nuggets and Jazz, Warriors and Thunder, Raptors and 76ers. Again, I have the Celtics coming out. Like I said before with the Bucks, the biggest thing is just maturity. It comes down to maturity, coaching, and then key player matchups, most likely Kyrie and Bledsoe, as well as Al Horford and Brook Lopez. Those are going to be the most notable ones. Giannis is going to Giannis. He's going to be able to play really well, especially if Thon Maker ends up leaving. They're going to miss out on a key player in the paint who has a little more mobility than Brook Lopez. I know last time Thon Maker, I believe, in one of the wins the Blazers had over the Celtics, he had 4 or 5 blocks, but he was a threat in the paint. Easy bunny buckets. That's the little bunny hop, easy 2 points. So you definitely gotta give him his credit. I think that's going to be probably the biggest challenge. But still have the Celtics pulling out. Not saying it so much as a Celtics fan, but just more so looking at previous experience and then just overall how the teams match up. While the Bucks are a solid team, well put together, I think the biggest thing is like overall playoff performance and how some of these other players are going to be able to handle the pressure of playing in the Boston Garden. The second series would be the Nuggets and the Jazz. I mean, yeah, the Nuggets and the Jazz. I have the Nuggets taking this one. Again, the Jazz, their lack of consistency, pretty much Donovan Mitchell and Rubio. They're going to have amazing games. Joe Ingles, he's going to have to, I mean, he's a great two-way player as well. I will give him his credit. He may not be the most athletic, but when it comes to defending on the perimeter, he's a solid defender on the perimeter. He can definitely draw those fouls. So those offensive fouls. So he does a great job, and I can see him, taking advantage of that, especially with this Nuggets team. They get a little cocky, they get a little rowdy. So I got to sit here and say, hey, that might be one of y'all's major problems when it comes to the playoffs. Moving forward, there's the Warriors and the Thunder. Have the Warriors getting this one out. Most likely, this would be the 7-game series. Steph can't match up to Russell Westbrook, and Russell can't match up to Steph. So pretty much, they're going to outplay. Like, it's going to come down to who can outplay the other and who goes cold less. KD, there really isn't a true answer for KD except for Paul George. But I think that overemphasis on defense may be a challenge for Paul George, because that means he's limited in his offensive output just in regards to energy. The paint's going to be a big factor. I can see Serge Ibaka and I'm sorry, not Serge Ibaka. I'm thinking way back. I can see Steven Adams playing a huge role in this series when it comes to Boogie. Most of it is holding Boogie in the paint, forcing him to play the paint a little more. If the Thunder, if they rotate properly, and the way Boogie has been, he hasn't found his 3-point yet. So the biggest challenge is just keeping Boogie rotating, and then for him to play his true role, which is to get boards and put it back up. Steven Adams, he has that tree trunk style base, so that's one of his biggest advantages, and I hope he takes full advantage of it, because that'll be a big task for Boogie to answer. How does he get these rebounds, and how does he avoid these fouls? Steven Adams does a great job of staying outside the restricted area, going straight up, but then also drawing some of those offensive fouls. And then finally, Raptors and 76ers. This one just comes down to maturity, experience, and ability to play through. Obviously, maturity. The Raptors, they're a more mature team. They've had more experience. Jimmy Butler is actually going to be an Achilles heel for this team because of his fiery attitude, his grittiness. I think that actually challenges and deters some of his younger teammates. The 76ers squad is a younger squad, but they are definitely a dark horse. I'll give them their credit. They can step up and they can knock out some series. But for the most part, it's going to come down to, can Joel Embiid last, and can these dudes handle the pressure of being so close to the NBA Finals? But I do have the Raptors coming out with this one. And this one actually goes back to, it balances out to having an East versus East and West versus West. There are two teams. There's two sets of East versus East, the Bucks and the Celtics and the Raptors and the 76ers. And then you have the Nuggets and the Jazz, and then the Warriors and the Thunder. So it's East versus East, West versus West. So it pans out perfectly. But then it offsets again to being East versus West and East versus West. So for the semifinals, you have the semifinals, you have the Celtics and the Nuggets. I have the Celtics coming out. Maturity is going to win. Experience is going to win this one in coaching. And then you have the Warriors and the Raptors. This one is a true toss-up. 7-game series, bucket for bucket, gritty, grind. Like, it's going to be a grind show. So that's a toss-up. But for the sake of the argument, saying that it could still come down to an East versus West NBA Finals, let's go ahead and say that the Warriors get this one out. But please note that I'm saying that this is a true toss-up. Either team can get it. And that's just going to come down to the Celtics and the Warriors NBA Finals. Have the Warriors winning this one. The true X factor is going to be Boogie Cousins and their paint presence coming off the bench. That's going to be very hard to stop. We don't have the best paint presence. We have Tice, Horford, and Williams. While Williams has given us great minutes, the biggest challenge is he able to handle that on such a big stage? Al Horford, energy-wise, as well as his body, he's a little bit older. Is he able to really move with Boogie? and Daniel Tice. He can definitely drain the three, but again, our biggest issue is mobility. Boogie Cousins isn't the typical big man. He can move a little bit. He can shake. His handles, foot control is insane. So that's definitely going to cause a few issues for us. But like I said before, the main issues that come along with the 16 seed: parity, scheduling, travel, and how the teams match up, because it could end up being a West versus West NBA Finals or East versus East NBA Finals. While that may be interesting, that poses some challenges. But I think that overall, looking at it now, in regards to parity, it's only 10 versus 6 in the West. So pretty much any team could come in and out. The game differential isn't that high. And then looking at the matchups, you only have what? In the first round, you have 4 sets of interconference matchups. Then after that, it balances out, and then when you get to the third round, the semifinals, it goes back to East to West. But I think that's interesting because it's like a mini NBA Finals before the NBA Finals, and especially if one series ends before the other, you start having that question like, oh man, what if it's East versus East or West versus West? Like, what's going to happen? I think that's very interesting, and that would actually draw more people in, especially the first time the 16 seed system goes in. Everyone's going to pull in and want to watch this because this is so new and so different. But I mean, outside of that, I think the NBA should still keep the conferences. They should keep the conferences just for the sake of scheduling, or they can bring in an NBA expansion. That's going to be another episode, another date. We'll definitely talk about that one. But I can definitely see 16 seed panning out pretty well. Ideally, I wouldn't want the Warriors to win. I want my Celtics to win. But, that's just how the cookie crumbles. But, yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. I would love to hear your feedback. I would love to see this, grow and expand into something so much bigger. I appreciate everyone. Y'all have a good night. Peace.